The Partial Breakaway Podcast with your hosts Nick and Junior and producer Vince, bringing you elite fantasy hockey information to help you win your fantasy leagues and win at life.
Let's go! Episode 45. Are we ready, ladies and gentlemen? Or just gentlemen, or ladies only?
I don't know. Should we restart the show? Because, anyways, we're full of energy this episode.
Thanks to the cold coffee.
Thanks to this cold coffee, which is brewed and delivered by Junior over here. And he bangs my computer right away. We actually started our first slow draft ever.
Yeah, first draft of the year for any of us.
First draft of the year, so that's always exciting.
Second. Llama.
We did have
just so long ago that
the entry draft for Llama.
Yeah.
You're right, absolutely. So this is the first second entry draft that we're doing, and it's for the DPR show, which is the Dauber Prospect Report show with Victor Nuno. And we're part of his division. And we made a couple of trades, actually. We looked at our teams. We were all co-sharing a team, I should mention, right, as the Partial Breakaway Fantasy Podcast. This is Junior, by the way, Nick, and Vince. And
which is hard, co-sharing teams.
Very hard having a three-person, and we all have different opinions on things. So it's a little bit difficult, and we always try to get consensus when we make a trade.
But it hasn't been that bad, right?
It hasn't been that bad.
It hasn't been that yet. That's just on for drafting. Mind you, we did a few trades too, right?
No, we've done 2 trades already. We realized that our roster was kind of lacking in the compete category. So we ended up getting rid of one of our big pieces in Gensel. But we got Michkov and a first out of it. And Norris.
Yes.
Josh Norris. We also got rid of Zuccarello. Sorry, I should have mentioned that as well in that trade. And then we also did a secondary trade with Barbashev and the 18th pick that we got from that first trade in order to jump back into the draft. So we end up with Leshinov, we end up with Seneki, and Michkov was part of the trade to start a rebuild. So those are 3 good players to have on your team to start a rebuild, I think.
Yeah, and Mishkov could help us as of now, which is nice.
And if Norris stays healthy. So, yeah. But, so we're good. Yeah, I mean, we know everybody's ramping up to get ready for their drafts. So, so this is why we give you this episode.
Part 2
of the Metropolitan League.
And I should mention, this is my first slow draft ever. Like each pick has 6 hours in between. Right?
Same here, and this is the deepest league I've ever been in. 18 teams.
18-team league too. Yeah, that's right.
Very deep league.
It's fun. It's going to be fun to see all these people that you don't really think about turning into someone. It's going to be fun.
All right, so last week we did part 1 of the Metropolitan Division. We took a look at the Devils, the Islanders, Columbus, and Carolina. This week, the Rangers. Shall we start with the Rangers? All right, so who's in, who's out from the New York Rangers? Riley Smith is in. I know I skipped the part. I'm going to get to it. Relax. So Riley Smith is in. Jack Roslovic is out. Wenberg is out. Barclay Goodrow is out. Eric Gustafsson is in. The Rangers ended the season with 55 wins and 23 losses. We don't count overtime losses in this podcast. And last year's power play ranking, 3rd overall at 26.4%. All right, guys, so let's move on to our tiers. Our first tier, which is 91 plus points. We have Artemi Panarin projected for 91 plus points. Talk to me, Nick.
Not much to say. The guy's a star. He's a stud. I'm expecting him again to go 91 points. It's hard. He doesn't play on the line with Zibanejad, right? He plays with Trocheck, and he plays with
Lafreniere.
Right? But they kind of split that up. Kreider, Zibanejad is on the first line, and both lines produce. I mean, this guy, first of all, on the power play, just unbelievably good. I have nothing to say that it's too simple. He's the best player. I don't know, Vince. Do you have anything special to say about Panarin?
No, listen. Some people might say he might be getting up there in age. He's at 32 years old, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't see him slowing down. Not with this team. This team hasn't made much changes. They kept their players, their core players, together. As we can see in the in and outs, they added Riley Smith, who could be an offensive tool for them, or he could be like what he did with Pittsburgh and nobody. So it all depends how he's coming in there. But yeah, I agree. This guy, last year, 120 points, 303 shots. It's just 44 points on the power play.
I'm just going to jump back in because I didn't give much before, but 302 shots, right? The year before that, he only had 204 shots, 177. So this was the most shooting that he's ever done in his career by 100. Is that possibly regression candidate?
For shots on goal, maybe, but point-wise, he's going to hit over 91.
Well, speaking of regression, he scored 49 goals. And I think that's a result of the extra 100 shots on goal, because he's never had more than, if I'm not mistaken here, 32 goals a season. He was coming off a 29-goal season in 82 games the year before, so he jumped up 20 goals. That's massive in one season, and for something he's never done before at this age, I mean, I would naturally expect a little regression, but he also hit 120 points. So he can easily still hit 91 plus for sure. And
we have him in the right tier.
Definitely in the right tier, and his shooting percentage is still pretty fair at 16%. So, and he's got you those power play points. Holy moly! Did you see that? 44 power play points. I mean,
that power play is lethal.
There's nothing else to say. I mean, Panarin is Panarin. 91 plus points. I think we're all on the same page.
Well, let's say one thing. Can he compare to be top 5 again in the league, points wise?
I say top 10. I
Yeah,
feel top 5. There's other players that are gonna get there to top 5 before him.
He's never cracked 100 points, and then last year he went to 120. I mean, yeah, maybe, who knows? But okay. I'd say more 5 to 10 than 1 to 5.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's more of a mid 90 point player than a 120 point player in his career so far. So, yeah.
All right. So no more players in the 91 plus points tier. So we're going to move on to tier 2, which is 80 to 90 points. And we do have a player here, Mika Zibanejad. Vince, lead us there.
He's I don't know. I feel like last year he had an off year, and I'm saying he had an off year, but yet he still got my computer's stalling. Sorry, 72 points. So, man, I don't know. He's the Rangers' window is closing very fast.
You think so?
Panarin at 32. Zibanejad at 31. I mean, what, they got 2-3 more years to get where they need to go. But Zibanejad, I'm saying he had an off year because 2 years ago 81 points, last year, the year before that 91 points. So you always hit that tier, right? Last year he hit our basically tier 3 instead of tier 2. Does this have to do because he wasn't playing with Panarin? Maybe.
He wasn't playing with Panarin last year either.
No, but
or the year before that.
No?
No.
I thought they were playing always together. So
it's because they both get a lot of power play points, so you see them on the score sheet together often.
They're on the same power play. That's absolutely accurate, yeah.
His shooting percentage went way down. It went to 11.8 last year. So I feel this is where, and his average is 13.2. So I feel he could get into that 80, into the tier we put him, but he can easily go back and get to tier 3. He's a very... Sabaja is a player who will get you in 1 week 25 points and then in the next week 3 points.
A streaky player, yeah.
You know?
I see what you mean.
So if you can get that consistency in, I think he can even get close to the 90 points. But
He did it in 22-23.
yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. He in 2021, 50 points in 56 games. Like he could do it, but it's the goal total. You see, his assists are very consistent. It's his goal totals that vary very much. Like in 2022, 2023, 39 goals. Last year, 26. Hence his shooting percentage going down. So I think we have him in the right tier, but he can also be a player that either goes up or down. He's a wild card to me. So that's my take.
I mean, his time on ice is pretty steady last 3 years. 1938, 1958, 1945. So we're talking about his usage is pretty much the same as it's always been. Mm-hmm. It all depends on his, I guess, streakiness during that year. So there's a little bit of volatility there with him. But between 70 to 90 points is possible. That's a big gap, obviously. I see him as a 30-goal, 50-assist kind of player. 80 points, just under a point per game.
Okay.
But again, it could vary just by a week here, a week there, putting up the extra points, you know?
Yeah, I was just you said it right before. To me, he's a 30-goal scorer. So we see 26, and we see 39, and we see 29. To be fair, he's a 30-goal scorer. And like Nick said, a point per game, I think that could be, I won't say his ceiling, because he's on a team that has a great power play, and a great power play usually leads to more goals, obviously. So that increases your point production as well. So if they keep the power play as efficient as it is, he could hit that maybe 90-point mark if he stays healthy 82 games. And in fairness, in terms of health, 81, 82, and 81 games played in the last 3 seasons. Can't ask for better than that.
That
really.
part's consistent.
And last thing before we move on to the next player, he also plays shorthanded. And last year he had 6 shorthanded points. That's a nice bonus to have. All right. Moving on to the next tier, because Zibanejad was the only one we had in tier 2. Tier 3 is a little bit more crowded. Let's start with the first player. One-time 50-goal scorer. That's for you, Tony. Chris Kreider. We expect 70 to 79 points, Nick?
Well, 33 years old, and he's still signed until I think he's 39, if I'm not mistaken. But a little bit of an interesting player in the sense that a little bit of volatility as well. So when I own him in Llama, so I should always put an asterisk when I own a player because, bias. But he consistently plays 81, 79, 82 games the last 3 seasons. His average time on ice is 18.25, 18.47, 18.43. So very consistent. The usage is the same. Always PP1 guy, and that's where his value really comes in. Last year, he had 29 points on the power play. He had 75 points last year, 54 only the year before. Kind of an off year for him. And then 77 the year before that. So I'm going to say that we have him in the right tier between 70 to 80 points. But where his value comes in is his goals. So if your fantasy league counts goals higher than points, total points, 39 goals last year, 36 goals the year before that, 52 that one time, right? I think that's where he is. The team hasn't changed enough around him for me to be worried about him hitting at least 30, 35 goals.
He's my regression candidate. I 77 points goes down to 54. 75 points last year could go down to the same thing. Once again, I look at age, 33 years old. People might say, oh, that's still young, but it's 33 years old. He's put up a lot of mileage on that body. So it's. I think this is a regression year for Kreider. I don't see. I might see him as still a 30 goal scorer, but I don't see him as a 36 assist guy or something like that. I see him going between 60 to 70 points. I would have him in the tier 4, in my opinion, just because his age. If that power play doesn't work, like let's say that power play doesn't work and doesn't do well, he's the one who suffers the most.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go so far to say that because he's a natural goal scorer. I don't think he needs the power play to score. I mean, out of his 39 goals last year, 18 were on the power play.
Well, they're half.
Less than half.
Yeah, but if you look at his...
But he's still going to get at least... he's not going to get less than 10 power play goals. I don't think you're going to think he's going to regress that much.
No, but like if you look when he scored 52 goals, 26 goals were on the power play. And but the year after that, he scored 36 goals and only 8 were on the power play. So...
Yeah, I mean, his shooting percentage stayed the same. Yeah, I think he's a tough player to gauge because he does fluctuate from one year to the other, except for his goal totals. Like, I think it's safe to assume he'll get 35 goals.
I said 30 goals. I see the 30 goals coming to him next year. I just don't see the high ratio assists going to him.
And look, until there's competition on the power play, I don't see him losing that spot anywhere.
Oh, we'll talk about a player who I think is going to be his competition.
And look, last year he was on the line with Zibanejad and Wheeler, or Zibanejad and Kako. You know, like that third piece wasn't always very, very good.
Who's the third?
They didn't really add anyone this year. I don't see anyone.
Smith.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see.
He's like a two-way.
Well, yeah,
He's in the same boat as the other two guys you just named. I mean,
that's it. I think it's a tit for tat
Yeah.
there, but I don't think there's a player ready to make the jump from the minors. Like Gabe Perreault, I don't think is ready yet. So he's not top line minutes. Anyways, look, not to get too carried away here. Like Nick said, his value is his goals. So you're almost guaranteed 35 goals, and last year on top of that, 7 of them game winners. So and he plays shorthanded. So he's a bit more of that complete guy.
Where I'll tell you where a little bit his age came into play. I think this season, he had 30 less hits than last year.
Mm-hmm.
50 less hits or 42 less hits than the year before that. So I just feel that he's hitting less. He's concentrating more on the shooting, more on the goal scoring, and less of that physical presence, maybe, because of his age. We'll see.
Time will tell. All right, moving on to the next guy in that tier. A number 1 defenseman, Adam Fox. All right, Vince, you take the lead here. Came off a 17 goal and... sorry about that.
Yeah, 17 goal, 56 assists.
And 73 points in 72 games. So he's coming off a point per game pace.
Yeah, he's Mr. Consistent. 2021, 2022, 74 points. 2022, 2023, 72 points. 2023, 2024, 73 points. So you kind of can't, he's going to hit that. He might even hit the 80 points. He's hitting his prime. 26 years old, my friends. So he's hitting his prime, and there's nothing to say about Adam Fox. He's a number 1 defenseman. He's their guy in the backhand. He'll play power play 1. He'll play their minutes, and I think there's only progression in his future. So we have him between 70 and 79.
We do.
Yeah, but he can be easily one of the guys that hits the 80s and has a season like Bouchard did or something like that.
Well, to your point, he was on an 83-point pace last year, but he only played 72 games. So if he would have continued, he would have hit that mark, projection-wise, right? The guy is... The funny thing is he's hitting more. He's at 44 hits now, 25 the year before that, 30 the year before that. And his shooting percentage increased a bit this year, but he's a stud. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Number 1 power play guy. He plays 23 minutes a night. That's huge. He used to play 24 minutes a night, and they had to cut him back a bit, I think. So he is on a great team, and he's the number 1 power play guy on that great team. Hard to argue that he's not belonging in this tier. Probably in the next one too.
So for a guy who's only been in the league for 5 years, his point per game pace at 82 games in his career is already 77. Only 5 years in the league.
Well, that's average the last 3 years, by the way.
No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years here.
If you're looking at 77,
Oh,
it's just
yes,
3 year
it's the
average.
last 3 years. Okay,
His career is 71, which is not that
71.
much
It's still a
difference.
70.3, right?
Yeah.
That's wild. Anyways, the last thing I'll add, because I mean, like you guys said, when players are this good and this consistent, it's hard to really talk about too much.
Yeah.
Because they are who they are. Everyone sees it. The one thing I'm just recently starting to pay attention to, because in the Dauber Prospect Reports league, it's a head-to-head category league, and there's points for best for a ratio of takeaway giveaway.
Yes.
So for a guy who plays 24 minutes a game, handles the puck because he starts the offense from the back, he has 47 takeaways over 33 giveaways. That's really impressive. I don't think like we can fathom someone doing that with that much puck on his stick and that many minutes played. That's like very, very impressive. I mean, other than that, you guys said what there had to be said. Number one defenseman in my books. And lastly, in tier 3, which is 70 to 79 points. A nice reminder there. Nick, tell us about Vincent Trocheck, because I know Vince has a lot to say about him. I want you to start.
Well, Trocheck is a guy that I never gave much respect to. And not because he's not a good player, but because I would look at his points and say, okay, well, he had 63 in 2022-23, 51 before that, 43 before that. The guy is 31 years old now. How is it the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, his point has just been increasing and increasing? Like he's getting better with age, like a good wine. You know what I mean? So it's very odd to see this kind of surgeons from somebody at this age, but I have to give it to him. I mean, 77 points last year. Playing, again, we said it, he plays with Panarin mostly. 21 minutes of ice time last year. His minutes on ice the last 3 years keep increasing. So he has a role on this team. I thought Hedl would maybe cut into that ice time a bit, but with Hedl's injuries lately, hasn't been the case. Hedl's clearly not where Trocheck is right now, and they're a win-now team, like you said. They have a few years ahead of them with a window. I think the window is longer than that because Shesterkin is still young. Lafreniere is going to be going up. There's going to be people replacing these guys, but either way, I have to give respect where it's due. And this player has, as a second-line center, if you want to call him that, he's been putting up the points lately, and he's definitely worth it on his salary.
As long as he keeps on playing in the power play one with players around him that he has, like Panarin, Zibanejad, Fox, Kreider, he's gonna hit the 70 points. Do I think it's gonna be high 70s? No, I feel it's gonna be more in the lower 70s that he'll hit. But when you play with a potent power play, it's hard not to get your points. So and we say this because, I say this because Pittsburgh thought last year they were going to have the number one power play, which we'll talk about Pittsburgh after, and because of all the players they got, right? You had Crosby, Malkin, Erik Karlsson, Letang, and you saw that. I feel in the Rangers, the chemistry is there. It's like their chemistry is unbelievable, which makes it that all these players are just not overachieving, but excelling at the role they're given.
So is he will he underachieve this year? No.
I just say
regression.
it's gonna be low 70s. I don't. My underachiever is gonna be Kreider. I really believe Kreider will not get that tier.
The one thing I'll add to what you said to jump on your power play stats, he had 24 points on the power play last year, 11 goals out of the 25. But prior to that, never really hit 20 points on the power play. So he's not like super power play dependent. And as for like Hedl, eventually he could be that guy. And we know how things work in the NHL. It takes Trocheck maybe 2 weeks to not perform and Hito to go on a run for 2 weeks, and then the roles are suddenly reversed. So Hito wouldn't be a good wouldn't be a bad insurance pick in that case, because I don't see who else would take that jump.
Kind of like a handicap.
Like a handcuff.
Handcuff. Sorry, not a handicap. Handcuff.
Yeah, a handcuff.
Like in fantasy football.
Look, I like Trocheck a lot. I tried to sell him high in Llama, but not much takers. He's just, we spoke of Fox before, and it was a very quiet 70 points he put up.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Trocheck, the reason no one really gives him credit is because his points are very loud. No one expects him to get those points, and yet here he is, just keeps getting them. But you can't get that mental asterisk out of the way saying he is that guy. He's going to be that good. I don't think he'll hit 77 points, but I think he could hit. He's in what tier do we have him in here?
70 to 79.
Yeah, I think he's closer to 70 than he is 79. All right. That does it for tier 3. And we have one more player to talk about here in the tiers. In tier 4, our breakout candidate last year, Alexis Lafreniere, between 60 and 69 points. Vince, go ahead.
He is 22 years old and already 4 years in the NHL. 4 progressive years in the NHL. So he went from 21 to 31 to 39 to 57 points. This is the guy that I think will take some of Kreider's points, because I believe he's going to be bumped up to power play 1 and take Kreider's spot at some point in the season. So he got 57 points last year with only 6 points on the power play. If you go back to all the players we spoke about, they all had high points, but they also had high power play points. So because I feel he's going to be taking over Kreider's spot on the PP1, not all the time, but sometimes, and at the end of the day, most of the time, if he succeeds, he is my candidate to hit in the 70 to 79 next year.
Wow.
I'll disagree with you completely, and I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
Why would you take Kreider off when you could easily take Trocheck off?
Because
Kreider could put the puck in the net. He's a net front guy. He could shoot. He could score. He's done it. 36 goals, 30, 39, 50 goals.
Who's your center?
What do you mean? You have Zibanejad's already there.
Yeah, but he plays next to Fox.
But I guess you could.
But why would you take off your number one goal scorer, because he is your number one goal scorer? Panarin is your setup guy. Fox is your setup guy. You have 2 great setup guys there. Why would you get rid of the guy that puts in the goals to put in another guy that has never done it but could do it to put in goals? You're not improving anything.
No, I think
because I never said Lafreniere is going to go off the bat. I say he's going to take over Kreider's spot, because
but why Kreider? Why not Trocheck?
Because he's projecting Kreider to regress.
Kreider to be a regression candidate, and that's why I feel that if there's one person who's going to get off of that power play, they're gonna keep Kreider there as long as possible. But at some point, I feel he's going to be the one that's going to be okay. Take a step back, and Lafreniere is going to take his spot.
No, I just don't see it. You have a proven goal scorer that hasn't regressed yet. Even if he lowers his goal scoring, he's still higher than Trocheck in goal scoring. You keep Kreider on the number 1, and you have Lafreniere on the other side taking Trocheck's spot. And again, the reason for that, and this is the coach's decision. We're all projecting here what might happen, but why not have 2 goal scorers on your top power play instead of having just 1 goal scorer and then replacing that 1 goal scorer type thing? At least have teams guessing what's going to happen. But in all honesty, this is the 3rd ranked power play. They have no reason to change anything.
But just to add, I think it also goes with the type of role they have on the power play. And it looked like Trocheck, from what I can recall last year, Trocheck had like the bumper spot, and Kreider was kind of below the goal line. And I don't see Lafreniere maybe being that below the goal line guy. I see him more playing the Zibanejad role. And that's where I find it difficult for him to crack the top power play, because I don't think he fits that role enough where Kreider is. But at the end of the day, like Vince said, he could earn his way on the power play, but someone has to make their way out of the power play.
Who's that going to be, right?
Who's that going to be? That's why he said he thinks Kreider is going to regress, so it makes sense for him to put the next best player available, which is Lafreniere. And I'll end Lafreniere's take here, unless you guys have anything to add?
No, I mean the guy's been progressing every year. So
So I'll finish with saying that 82 games played, 81 games played, 79 games played. So if you're catching my drift here, all these players that we're talking about have for the Rangers, all healthy players. All played at least 75 plus games in the last 3 years consecutively.
Which helps with chemistry.
What helps with chemistry, exactly. And I'll end the player tiers with a question. Lafreniere jumped from 16 goals to 28 goals, which in a development stage could be normal if this is who we think he's going to be. It's 200 game mark, right? We talked about
first overall pick, right? I
Right.
mean,
Lafreniere, 30 goals, not necessarily next year, but will he be a 30 goal scorer?
I think next year he's a 30 goal scorer.
Yeah, I think he hits 35 next year.
Wow, nice. Okay, yeah, I would say he's a 30 goal scorer too.
Yeah.
Just once.
He's already close to it. I mean, the question is, will he ever be a 40 goal
Yeah.
scorer?
I have a hard time seeing that, but I see him more as a,
He's
fighting a
developing.
point per game, but I don't think he's quite.
Look, if you put him on the power play, all of a sudden
Yeah, I see.
those
I see where you're going.
goals
Those
could
goals-
skyrocket.
Exactly. So we'll see. It'll be an interesting dynamic. And like you said, Rangers have been really healthy, like in the past 4 or 5 years. So they've never got hit with the injury bug on one of their star players. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
like just Adam Fox played 72 games.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Like even if you go to like Kendra Miller, VC, and all these guys, they all played 80 games. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Anyhow, all right. So let's move on to arguably their most valuable player, which leads us to the goalie tandem. Igor Shesterkin had a save percentage of .912 last year, a goals against average of 2.58. Not too shabby. A goals saved above expected 5-on-5, 29th in the league. Could be a little bit better there. Jonathan Quick, his backup, phenomenal year last year. Save percentage of .911, so the same pretty much as Shesterkin. Goals against average 2.62, more or less like Shesterkin. We're talking about like decimal points here. And a goal save above expected on 5-on-5 at 42nd. Is this the best goalie tandem in the league?
Hard to beat. Hard to beat. I mean, Shesterkin is a star, and I think he had an off year last year. I think he had an off year last
The
year.
two Russians, Shesterkin and Sorokin, had off years last year.
That's right. His goal save above expected was nothing to write home about. His goal save above average decreased from 44 to 21 to 15 last year. So quality start percentage decreased from 69 to 60 to 58. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that he had an off year last year, not just the save percentage, not just the goals against average. And I think there's a bounce back person here. So it's scary to say that. But Shesterkin might actually have taken over from Vasilevsky as the best goaltender in the league. I think Vasilevsky, with his injury problems, has that tier 1 kind of lowered a bit. And we're seeing Shesterkin as that valuable.
Oh yeah, I like, and it's sad, not sad, but it's scary to say Rangers won 55 games and their goalie had an off year. Like Shesterkin this year will have a Hellebuck year. He will be in that Vezina conversation, if not run away with the Vezina next year. He's got something to prove because of last year's numbers. And I agree with Nick 100%. He's, to me, the best goalie in the NHL right now.
Ottinger had a off year last year. Hellebuck had a great year.
Yeah.
Guys, let's not take anything away from Hellebuck. But I just want to say that because Shesterkin had an off year, because Ottinger had an off year, because Vasilevsky missed time recovering from injuries, Hellebuck pretty much was the only person, maybe Saros, right?
Yeah, he just started off bad, so he started off slow, Saros, which...
But how scary does this make the New York Rangers?
You could be looking at your Vezina winner next year.
Well,
That's what I
exactly.
believe.
And look, like you said, Shesterkin, we're talking about Shesterkin on an off year, and the Rangers were 8th in goals for in the league and 7th best goals against. So despite his off year, they still were 7th best goals against. And I think that we deserve to give a lot of credit here to Jonathan Quick. I think Jonathan Quick played a big role because your backup doesn't always give you that many games at a save percentage of .911 and a goals against average of 2.6.
Yeah.
So, But like you said,
It gives you a chance to win even on days that your starter isn't there.
right, and
It's so rare.
Yeah.
So rare.
and the goals for obviously helps when either of them are having a bad game. All right, moving on to the block. Well, not really the block of players in front of them. I was referring to the defensive core, but the power play defenseman. Is there anybody other than Adam Fox we should be talking about here?
No. No. When you see Trouba on your second power play, you know that power play is playing maybe 20 seconds.
Yeah,
if possible.
I'll say that Keandre Miller has a chance to put up a couple of extra points there. But it's not somebody that I would go out and get just for power play exposure, right? He had like 8% of the power play time last year. You know what I mean? And he only had one power play point last year. So he's not the guy. Trouba it's a little bit weird that Trouba was.
Yeah, I don't know how this relationship is going to work. That they tried to trade him and then he didn't want to get traded.
He didn't want to get traded, but even him, he only had one power play point last year. So this is Fox's whole. It's Fox.
The Rangers do what Pittsburgh does, what a lot of teams do, and they play their first power play 1 minute and a half if they can to 1 minute and 45 seconds. A power play. So, I mean, it is Fox. And that's it. But Gustafsson isn't even there this year.
That's right. So they lost Gustafsson. He only had 9 power play points last year.
Yeah.
Total of 31 total points. So, I mean, we're not. I just don't see anybody else being relevant. Sorry, excuse me. Anybody else being relevant?
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say other than Gustafsson last year, Trouba and Miller were the only other defensemen to get a point, and they only got 1 point each. Yeah. So it's Fox all the way. I mean, and if he gets injured, they're in trouble. They're in big trouble if he gets injured.
Yeah.
Well, injuries haven't hit this team at all.
So
No,
exactly.
but that's why, and they're not deep though. That's the impressive part.
But they didn't have to worry about that for the next 5 years. So, for the last 5 years, sorry.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the prospects, those that eventually will fill that void of injuries, if ever they get any. Let's start with Gabe Perreault. They have, okay, I'll list them all, and then you guys can talk about who you think is the most prominent or who stands out the most. So we have Gabe Perreault, Othman, Brett Berard, and Adam Sikora. Am I missing anyone here? I mean, Gabe Perreault, I think, is obviously the most prolific.
Most talented, most prolific for sure. I do see Gabe Perreault not making the NHL for a couple more years, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like he's still very young. I don't know. Othman, actually, I own Othman, sorry. So I could mention Othman as well, is a player that's supposed to be a middle sixer that could break that top 6 mold. In my books, I don't know why, but I always found Othman is the perfect replacement for Kreider when Kreider retires. So he might be getting a cup of coffee soon in the NHL, but I don't think he's going to be fantasy relevant this year. But long-term plan there. Gabe Perreault, so talented. So talented. But probably a few years away from being fantasy relevant. In a keeper league, you absolutely want to keep Gabe Perreault.
Yeah, same thing. I also feel Ottoman could be the replacement for Kreider. I just feel 21 years old. Hopefully he gets more than the 6 games you got last year. Did he play in the AHL last year?
If I'm not mistaken, he did. Let's see here. Othman. Oh, boy.
Yeah, because it doesn't give me the numbers for...
Yeah, it's slow. Othman. He's played, yeah, he had to because he played 3 games last year with the Rangers. 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 points.
Yeah.
6 shots on goal in 3 games. 6 hits. 9 minutes of ice time.
Here we go. It's Brendan Othman, right?
Brennan, yeah.
Let me see what I get as his stats. So for the Hartford Wolfpack, 67 games, 21 goals, 28 assists, 49 points as a first season in the AHL, which isn't bad. 10 power play goals, 4 game-winning goals. So I think he still needs to flourish in the AHL a bit more to crack this lineup, because this lineup is just so potent in their top 6 that I don't see him playing in a bottom 6 role. I see him more in the top 6. So I would make him flourish in the AHL and then see what he can do.
Look, he's turning 22 in a couple of months. He's at that age where maybe he should start getting that jump, whereas Gabe Perreault is still not even 20 years old yet. So I was wondering, though, if Gabe Perreault maybe gets a sniff at the end, if they sign him to the entry-level contract at the end of the college year. And
He's still in college this year.
So other than that pretty much does it for the prospects. And final thoughts and predictions. Well, Dom's model has the Rangers ranked 24th for their off-season productivity, basically how they've handled the off-season. Things stayed pretty status quo. They're still a top team. They still have a top power play. Like, nothing has changed in the top tier of things for them. But for a team that didn't win the Cup and is usually supposed to be in contention for it, I don't think they did enough.
All depends if Shesterkin bounces back in my books.
To me, if Shesterkin has a Hellebuck type of year, they're making it to a Stanley Cup Finals.
I just wish they would have had maybe another solid puck-moving defenseman.
They
But to relieve a bit of pressure from Fox, or if he gets injured,
but
you can't do it based off injuries. I know, but
because you just like Colorado, you take out McCarr.
I mean, they still have like a Devin Taves. They still have Sam Girard. I mean, they have
but you can't compare to
offense drivers.
I know,
but if you're going from Adam Fox to Kandre Miller, it's a significant difference there. And anyways, to me. But anyhow, that does it for the New York Rangers. If you guys feel otherwise and have different thoughts, let us know. Moving on, Nick, to the Philadelphia Flyers.
Torts.
Mishkov. By the way, Flyers fans, you should be happy we traded for Mishkov.
That's right. For that fan that commented on our post, oh, look at these Habs fans talking about Mishkov. We love Mishkov. So you could end that narrative right now. Fact of the matter is, Philadelphia Flyers had 38 wins. Kind of a surprising season for them. 38 wins, 33 losses. We don't talk about overtime losses on this podcast because they're worthless. 32nd in the power play. That really hurt them. Who's in? Nobody. Absolutely nobody except Michkov came early from the KHL. That is a nice surprise and might change the trajectory of this team's power play. But we'll talk about that later. Who's out? Cam Atkinson. So, good role player, I find. Maybe not the Cam Atkinson that he used to be, but it's still a little bit of a loss. Our player tier. So, unfortunately, Flyers fans, I think you know this better than we do, but you don't have players that are 91 plus point players at this time. So nobody.
What do you mean? Mishkov's not going to be a 91 plus point player?
Well, according to that fan. But realistic fans understand that a rookie coming in, even at 20 years old, that he's going to be this year, he's not going to hit 91 points. He's not going to hit 80 to 90 points either. So you could write that. If you guys want, you could write that
Nick,
down.
Can you give us some positive info on the Flyers here? What's the matter with you?
Well, they just signed Konechny. And Konechny is the only player that we have in our tier group. He's tier 3, 70 to 79 points. That's where we have him at. Maybe a possibility of hitting tier 2. I don't know, Vince. Why don't you tell us?
I like Konechny. I'm glad they signed him. I think he plays a style of hockey that Torts likes. I just feel if he was better surrounded or consistently better surrounded, especially at the center position, he could hit that high 70 to 80 points. But that's the thing with the Flyers. The Flyers came out of the gate like people thought, okay, Torts implemented his system. The players are buying in. And then it was the end of the season. Like as soon as that whole thing with Sean Couturier happened, it seemed like the whole team got deflated and they had a terrible end of the year. Hence why they didn't make the playoffs. Because with the beginning of the year they should have made the playoffs. But the end of the year really brought them down. Travis Konechny, he's a consistent player to me. Last year his shot total went way, way up at 244 compared to 191. But his shooting percentage, 13.5, which is what he was at. So he got 68 points last year on a power play that was 32nd, dead last in the league. Now, guys, Michkov is going to change that on the power play. That power play is not going to be 32nd. It's not going to be first in the NHL, but it ain't going to be 32nd. So, because of that, Konechny could get his extra 6, 7 points, 8 points, and make it into the high 70s, maybe hit that 80 points. So, I really like him as a player. But he's not a... He can't do everything by himself. He needs help, and I feel last year he was on an island on his own.
9 power play points. So your top scorer has 9 power play points. I mean, being 32nd power play in the league will do that to you, but like you said, you spoke about well surrounded. His most consistent line mates last year were Sean Couturier, the captain who was sent to the doghouse by Torts, and Tyson Forrester, who I don't think is projected to be a top line player. Maybe top 6. I think he can flip to top 6. He's good, but just to say, like, you surround this guy with people who can dish him the puck or could put the puck in the net, and his points could increase. But if you remember correctly, Konechny was also in the doghouse, and there were trade rumors for Konechny. People were saying he was going to be traded, and now he signed the extension. So, like, I don't know what happened there, but something had to have happened to have eased the waters a little bit. Anyways, I'm glad he's staying in Philadelphia because anytime you change team, your production might dip. Consistent. I absolutely love this guy. And for a player he was a $5 million player. So he was putting up those points at $5 million a year. That's great value. Absolutely great value. His new contract, have you mentioned what it was or no?
No, I did mention.
His new contract, if I'm not mistaken here, it's his last year at 5.5. Then he's moving up to 8.75. So anytime you move on to 8.75 now, I'm expecting you with hands down to flirt with a point per game, if not be a point per game player. But as this team develops, like you said, Mishkov going and they have a few prospects coming up as well. We'll get to it later. I expect him to be easily a point per game player when this team is ready to at least compete for a playoff spot. They competed last year, but I think it was above what everybody expected.
Yeah. I don't see them making the playoffs this year, but I will say that Konechny is their top player to own in fantasy. I'll also say that he plays a style that the Broad Street Bullies need. He is that shit disturber. He is that guy, that Brad Marchand type annoying guy. Always talking, but he backs it up with points as well. I like Konechny for this year. I think that Konechny will only keep improving as the team keeps improving, which is, I think, your guys' points here. I'm excited for the fact that he's actually staying on this team. His contract, it's a little rich for somebody that's never hit great point paces. He only hit an 80-point pace or above once in his career, which was 22-23, where he only played 60 games and got 61 points. But he's the type of player that has the talent to be just under a point per game, I think, consistently, as long as the team around him is improving. So I love that. One of the players that kind of came in recently, because this is a very young team, I find, right? And has been doing pretty well, is Owen Tippett. Owen Tippett is a guy that I think $5 million is his contract. I should have looked it up before mentioning it, but
6.2.
6.2.
I think this is the first year of his extension.
Yeah. So Junior, talk to me a little bit about Tippett.
Who? No, I'm just kidding. Relax. Owen Tippett, like you said, 28 goals, 25 assists, 53-point pace last year. I feel like it's a guy that not a lot of people talk about. Fantasy related, yes. I think he's more important to a National Hockey League team, not fantasy related, than he is in fantasy. I'll take 28 goals anytime, right? I mean, this guy could hit 30. Same thing like Konechny. You surround him a little bit better, he could be a consistent 30-goal scorer, more power play points. He had nine power play points last year. So if their power play could get a little bit better, and he's a big part of that, I think he could be a big part of that. I see his point production going up a little bit. I like where we placed him right now. I don't think his entered his. He's like starting to figure out who he is. 27 goals last year, 28 goals this year. I think he's found his niche. I think we could foresee him to being a consistent 30-goal scorer and about a 60 to 69 point player.
A late bloomer. A lot of people have had kind of given up on him because he wasn't developing as quickly as other players when he was drafted. But it seems once he hit Philly, he got his confidence, and then he started putting up the points that they thought he could put up. So I agree with you. I think there'll be a progress this year. I don't think he'll hit that 70 point thing. I think he'll hit in the mid 60s. The goals, I feel he could hit the 30 goals. He almost hit it last year. I think he can hit between the 30 and 35 goals as long as that power play gets better. Especially that he takes a ton of shots, 289 shots. So he takes a ton of shots. His shooting percentage 9.7, but he's figuring it out. So I feel for next year, we have him in the right tier. He's gonna keep on improving, and the more chemistry he gets with Konechny, and that's down the middle, the Flyers are worrisome. So
just to that point, what the chemistry of Konechny was his least common line mate. Do you believe that? Least common line. I'm looking at like his line mates from quarter to quarter. This guy's played with about 20 different players on his line.
Exactly.
Absolutely ridiculous. And he scored 28 goals, we said?
Yeah, 28.
Man, get this guy a proper center.
Oh, 35 goals.
and just some consistency with his line mates. And I who knows what he could do.
What do you guys think about Farabee? Is he a player that could eventually hit that 60 to 69 points? Is he somebody that we think is another slow or late bloomer? Do we have any opinions about Farabee?
I really liked him because he had come off a nice season, like 38 points in 55 games in 2020, 2021. So, you think, oh, okay, this kid's got something. He's showing signs. And then he just never really took off. Like he last year, he was on pace for 50 points. Well, he got 50 points in 82 games. By now, you would expect a little bit more. I was expecting a little bit more, but look, it's never too late. Vince just said Tippett was a bit of a late bloomer. Maybe Farabee's along the same path. So I think given the situation, the context, and the opportunity he could have on this team, especially now adding a bit more of an offensive punch with Mishkov, I think maybe he could push 60 points this year. I think he has the tools. Now it's up to him and the coaching staff to put it together.
Coaching staff. That's in with Philly. This is what worries me, is the coaching staff. And listen, I take Torts as a coach any time of the day, but we all have to remember that Torts is an old school guy, and a player can score a hat trick one game and the next game get benched because he gave the puck away. So that's where a lot of these players that we're talking about, like the Tippetts, the Farabees, it has a lot to do with how the coaching is gonna handle different situations. And like some players have blossomed under Torts, but we've also seen a lot of players crumble under Torts and then succeed somewhere else. So I put Farabee in the same area as Tippett. I just feel because Tippett is ahead of him now, he'll get those extra minutes, whereas Farabee will have to gain those minutes back this season.
And it's a little easier for Tippett being a natural goal scorer to succeed than it is for Farabee, who maybe might need someone around him to help him get more points. Because I don't think he's good enough yet, maybe, to make those around him better.
There's a lot of defensemen on this team. Well, 6 of them start every game,
Yeah,
right?
obviously. Or else you can't play.
But there's only one defenseman that kind of put up 40 points or more this season, and that was Travis Sanheim.
Mm-hmm.
However, he's not necessarily meant to be the number 1 power play guy or the number 2 power play guy, as most people foresee Cam York and Drysdale playing those roles. Ristolainen is still on this team. Igor Zamula had power play time last year. So who is the number one power play guy moving forward, you guys think?
Drysdale. Drysdale is the player who's going to make this power play work. The problem with Drysdale is, can he stay healthy? He's always hurt since even with the Ducks. I mean, what were his games played? And he's been in the league for 4 years.
Last year he played 34 games. He had 10 points, which is a 24-point pace.
Yeah. So Drysdale is the one who's got the talent to bring this power play to the next level, or at least out of the bottom. And
6th overall pick from 2020.
Yeah, and he has the offensive skills to do this. So, listen, I think it's Drysdale. I think Sanheim surpassed Cam York last year, and that's why he was getting the power play time and the number one pairing defense time. So, but can he repeat it? I don't know. I feel that this defense is very big, rugged, and Drysdale is the main key for that offense.
I think it's Drysdale's job to lose. He'll get first dibs guaranteed. Cam York could get an opportunity there too, but I was surprised to see, because I just paid attention. I saw a minus 20 in 34 games. That's pretty bad
For Drysdale?
for Drysdale. That's pretty bad. But then I went to go see his minutes, and when he went to Philly, they played him 21 minutes, guys. So they really put him out there and see, show me what you could do. And I guess injuries kind of set him back a little bit, because what I was wondering was maybe he didn't perform because he was a minus 20. I figured he didn't have a lot of ice time. And I figured if he doesn't have a lot of ice time, he can't get his rhythm going, and then hence why the power play was bad. But they're actually playing him 21 minutes a game, so he's definitely given the opportunity. I think the fact that they were competing for a playoff spot hindered a lot of this, helped Sanheim play more and get more opportunity on the power play, because they were trying to win games instead of trying to develop and build some kind of chemistry. I think it's naturally on skill alone, it should be Drysdale's job to lose.
I think you guys are bang on Drysdale should be the guy. I just feel that they're still looking for who that guy is going to be.
Oh yeah,
I think they tried a lot of different things last year, because if you even look at the power play time, Cam York had 39% of the power play time, but he had the most points between those guys. Zamula had power play time. Sanheim had a bit of power play time, not much, but he had the most points out of everybody. So they're still kind of taking a look at who could possibly steal that job. It's not a very lucrative job, but maybe Michkov makes it look a little bit better. So with 30-second power play, right? So let's jump right into Michkov. We'll get to the goalies right after that, but Matvei Michkov is the star moving forward on this team. I think pretty much every Flyer fan will tell you that. He was second to Bedard in that draft year, and a lot of people were saying that if Bedard wasn't there, Michkov would have been the number one overall pick. So, are we saying that?
Okay, sorry, just to interrupt.
Just talent-wise, sorry.
So that they don't get confused. He wasn't second in the draft, but he was second, touted second.
Touted second talent-wise.
Okay, sorry. I just want to clarify, because
yes,
could have been.
So, I mean, what are we thinking about Michkov in his first year?
if he hits 50 points, it's a very successful season. And if he could hit 25 goals, it's a very successful season. I feel he's gonna be a phenomenal player, or he has the potential to be a phenomenal player. I don't believe he can do what Bedard did last year on his first year in the NHL. And man, I'm going to repeat myself again with Philly, but Torts is the wild card in here. Is Torts going to put up with his mistakes and keep on giving him the minutes? Or is he going to be a hard ass and tell him and staple his ass to the bench when he does something wrong? And that's where the difference will come in his points. I feel he could hit 50 points next year, and if he does, it's a successful season.
Yeah, I see him hitting 45 to 50 points, 20 to 25 goals. Like you said, I think in the end, if he shows that he's producing like that, Torts will live with some of the mistakes. And now, it also depends a bit like how the team goes. If they're competing for a playoff spot when they're not supposed to, unfortunately, it changes the way you have to coach. Coaches are going to play to win now, and he might feel the effect of that. But I think Torts, he's experienced enough to be able to say, if you're going to put up the points, fine, I can live with some of the mistakes. But the thing with Mishkov, and what said a lot, what people were afraid of, was his mentality. He was a bit lazy on the back check. He wasn't as implicated in the defensive zone. So that's what retracted a lot of GMs. But his talent is too good to pass up. At least 8 teams passed on him, I think, at the draft.
Oh.
He went 8th overall or 9th. So as long as he puts up the points, I think he'll be fine. And if we project right and he gets 40 to 45 to 50 points, then he's golden. I mean, Flyers fans should be very excited for him.
Well, we've said 45 points is a very good rookie season for a lot of guys who end up being franchise players in the end. I think Michkov has that offensive pedigree to even hit that 50 points, like Vince said. And if anything more than that, I think is gravy. Mm-hmm. He has to obviously be on the ice, and I think that's what you guys alluded to with Torts, right? We don't know if he'll live with Michkov's defensive game, but he is the heir apparent goal-scoring machine that Philadelphia needs on their team, and him, Konechny, and Tippett, I think, is going to be the goal-scoring tandem for quite a while here.
Can I throw a name out there just to see?
Sure, go.
Sean Couturier. Does he come back from his 36-point season? This is the captain of the team. Does this whole thing with Torts blow over and he comes back to be come back to be the player he was? He did come back from a devastating injury. So, but can he be the player that guides some of these young players to the next level?
I mean, I think so. He's still their captain. So, I mean, at some point, if you're not going to get rid of him, some of that has to be water under the bridge for the team's sake, for the culture of that team. He's not a bad player, and he's still 31, so it's not like he's old. Mm-hmm. I think his injuries maybe make him a little older, but if he could stay healthy, I think he could even flirt with the 50 to 60 points.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I see him more as a 55-point player moving forward rather than a 70-point player that he was during his career. Point pace player anyways. I mean, if you look at 2021 all the way down to 2017, it's always been 76, 78, 70, 75 point paces that he's put up. So I just feel like those days might be over a bit. Mm-hmm. Not because he's 31, because 31's not old, but more of the injuries that he sustained might lower him down to that 55 with the potential of hitting 60.
If my first instinct, if I was coach of the Flyers, is to put Mishkov on his line.
Oh, yeah.
So he can protect Mishkov defensively.
Daily Faceoff has them projected. Forrester, Couturier, and Mishkov together.
So Konechny was there, though, last year, right?
Yeah, now they actually have Konechny and Tippett. They're two highest point producers on the same line. But again, this is Daily Faceoff just projecting.
There's a lot that could change there, absolutely.
Usually does. Usually a lot of this changes. Yeah. But it's fun to just at least have something to go off.
Absolutely. Their number one draft pick from this season raised a few eyebrows, but Jet Luchenko is the youngest in the draft class. Mm-hmm. He was almost a full year younger than some of the other guys that went. So what happens with that is that you kind of see progression that might occur a little bit later, and we're kind of seeing that, right? I think Luchenko's draft stock has risen after the draft, and I see maybe a top 6 center for them in the future. Do you guys see that this guy is the replacement to Couturier, or?
Well, when you draft a player that high, it's because those are your expectations.
Okay.
your expectation is he's going to be either your top, if not your top, your second line center. So it was the shock of the draft this year, that pick. But
I mean, Seneke was pretty shocking.
yeah, Seneke going third. But I mean, this
One
one
of our viral videos.
It was still a shock. But listen, they have scouts. They saw after he got drafted, people actually looked into him and said, "Oh, okay, well, this kid isn't as bad as we thought he was, or maybe off the radar." So it's with young players, it's all about development. How is he going to develop? How is he going to grow into his body? How is he going to help himself to make the next step to the NHL? But for sure, their projection for him is top 1 or top 2 center.
I've been listening to Dauber reports, because they were talking about the summer showcase, Canada World Juniors, and he was probably one of the most standouts of that showcase. On a line, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong because I don't know if it was 2 different segments, but I think he was on a line with Seneke and Agilna.
That's a nice
And they were the best. They were by far. That was by far the best. The best line. The best line in the showcase. And I'll just go on to say I do think he's Couturier's replacement. I think he's your ideal, perfect number 2 center, both ways. Big face, very important face-off guy, and could still put up points.
Guys, what do we think about Tyson Forster? He's on the number 1 line on this team, and he's a prospect. So he's played under 100 games, I believe.
Yeah, he has. Last year was his first year with the team. I know for a fact that Torts is very high on this player. Thinks that this player can be very good. There was an actual interview, I don't know with who, where Torch says that he's got high expectations for Tyson Forster. Last year was his first year, 33 points, but the impressive thing is he put in 20 goals. So, I mean...
for a rookie.
For a rookie to put in
a little older
goals.
rookie. He's 22
exactly.
years old, but still.
But 22 goals, it's still something for a rookie. Got his feet wet. And now I'm guessing they're expecting him to take the next step. What's the next step? Probably in the 45 to 50 points, 25 goals, 30 goals, up that. Like I said, these guys, they had a terrible power play last year. I mean, you push that power play from 32nd to 26th, and everybody gets a bit more points. So,
and you know what could help? And the reason we say Mishkov helps with that is a lot of this power play didn't have a focal point.
Mm-hmm.
Like no team was saying, "Oh, we got to prepare for this guy." Whereas now they're going to say, "We got to prepare for Mishkov," which opens a couple of lanes for someone else, and then we'll see who takes advantage of that. But usually we say rookie year we expect 40 to 45 points to 50 points for an elite. Okay, not like
a very good rookie.
Not generational like Bedard, but like a very good elite prospect. We expect at least 45 to 50. He hit 33.
Yeah.
So if he's second tier, that's not bad at all if you're a Flyers fan. And
he could be a top 6 forward.
I agree. I think, like you guys said, if he hits the 45 points next year, it's a nice progression in his development for sure.
We have to watch training camp. I want to see if somebody like Oliver Bonk gets a shot to make the team. He's a little bit young still, but we'll see. He's their defenseman prospect of the future. He's pretty solid defensively. Team Canada player. Denver Barkey and Bobby Brink. Bobby Brink played last year. I don't see these guys being fantasy relevant, but maybe somebody to keep an eye on for deeper leagues, and especially in the future. Guys, they also have Kolosov, who is a goaltending prospect for them, and another Russian who just joined them for this year, Ivan Fedotov. He'll be joining Samuel Urson. Urson last year had an 890 save percentage, 2.82 goals against average, 53rd in goals saved above expected on 5-on-5. Fedotov, it's his first year in the league, so we don't really have stats for him. But we're expecting these guys to be fighting for a number 1 goaltender spot here.
I feel Fedotov is going to take this number 1 spot.
Is it because you're following the money, or is it because you think he's that much better than Urson?
It's not but scouts say he is a better fit than Urson as a goalie, technique-wise, size-wise. So I think he's the one. And guys, there's one thing with Torts is he makes goalies look good. His system makes goalies look good. And with the numbers Urson put up last year, he's on a very short leash, like 0.890 save percentage, 2.82 goals against average. I think Fedotov can easily take over that job.
Yeah, look, his numbers weren't good in the 3 games he played, but I mean, 8-11 save percentage. But everything just felt rushed last year when he came. It's like...
I think there was one game he gave up like 9 goals, no?
Yeah, that probably does it, right?
I mean, you don't come back from that after.
Well, look, in 3 games, he had 10 goals again. So if he had 8 in one game, then, that explains
2 games
it.
were not so bad.
He had one really, really good game. I think he even got a shutout, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, he allowed 1 goal. But anyways, I think they're going to give Fedotov the opportunity over Urson. I think they've invested in him now. And kind of like Drysdale, right? Like, he'll get first dibs because of his profile, and if he takes advantage of it, it's his. If he doesn't, then Urson comes in.
Let's wrap it up. Final thoughts. Anybody have anything to add before I give what Dom said about their off season?
I think they're trending in the right way. I just don't think they're playoff contention. I know they made the playoffs or fought for just short of the playoffs last year. I don't think they should be competing for a playoff spot, but I didn't think that last year either, and they did.
Yeah, I think they're in a tough division to compete for a playoff spot. I mean, I think that...
Well, I mean, Carolina's going to miss the playoffs.
100%, yeah. That's a guarantee Carolina misses the playoffs, but we'll get there after. So, I think they're going to be... But I think they're going to be competitive. I think their power play is going to come out of the gutter. And Torts always has teams prepared, man. His teams are always well prepared, So
Dom's model had the Philadelphia offseason as 18th best, basically status quo. Nothing really changed that much. But Michkov is basically replacing Atkinson, and that's a huge win for all Philadelphia Flyers fans. It's going to be amazing to watch this guy. At least you have something to watch this year more than previous years. Something to be excited about. He should increase the power plays ranking right off the bat. And I think if Michkov was counted in this Dom's model, which he wasn't because he was already a draftee and he wasn't a free agent pickup, then this would have increased their ranking of 18th best to maybe 15th, 14th, 13th.
And when his model came out, he hadn't, it wasn't official that he was coming in. He was coming to North America, I believe.
All right. That does it for Philadelphia. Vince, why don't you take us into the oldest team in the league, I think.
This one's going to be fun, I think.
Team 3, the Pittsburgh Penguins, starting at center, Mario Lemieux on the wing, Gary Jagger. No, I'm kidding, guys.
Jagger is still playing professional hockey, by the way.
Yeah, at 53.
52 years old.
Who was the other guy that was just taking advantage of it? Stevens?
Yes, man. So basically, guys, this team was last year projected to have the number 1 or number 2 power play in the league. And instead, they had the 30th power play in the league at 15.3%. 38 wins, 32 losses. Who's in? Not anybody big. Kevin Hayes, Anthony Beauvillier, Matt Grzelcyk, who's out, Riley Smith, who honestly underachieved last year. Jeff Carter took his retirement, and Pierre-Olivier Joseph, who went to play with his brother, if I'm not mistaken. Tears. These guys have so many good players that we wish were still 26, 27 years old, but are not. But we do have one in Tier 1 at 91 plus points. The ageless wonder, Sidney Crosby. Can anybody debate this?
Find me.
Can anybody really debate this?
What are we debating?
Does Sidney Crosby not get 91 plus points?
No, for sure he gets 91 plus points. I mean, and credit to him, by the way, finally healthy. 82 games, 2 consecutive years. 93 points, 94 points. I think he continues off that. He's too good to say he's gonna drop. And even if he drops, I don't think he drops that much. You know, you spoke about the power play. 24 points on the power play for Sidney Crosby. That's not a lot. And when you have a 30th ranked power play, well, that explains it. But I expect way more than just 24 power play points from Sidney Crosby in 82 games, especially when you're playing 3 minutes and 35 seconds of the power play every game. Anyhow, look, his shooting percentage was a little high at 15% compared to the year before. But on average, it's about that, 15%. So I'm not too worried about his 42 goals. I think if something dips, it is the 42 goals. But he can, I see him, like we said before, players like this, there's not much to say when they consistently prove you right?
It's unbelievable that at 37 years old, this guy is still putting up 94 point pace. 94 points, sorry, in a season. And 93 the year before that. So absolute steal for anybody that managed to maybe trade in order to get Crosby because the other manager was saying, oh, this might be my last chance to trade him because he's getting old. This guy, it was a generational player. He's still a generational player until he retires. Sidney Crosby is the real thing. He's still the real thing. And I still see him 91 plus points this year.
Perfect. Well, we're all in agreement with that.
If I was a Penguins fan, I'd be very worried that he's not signed to an extension yet, especially when earlier in the summer they were saying how it was very close.
Stop it. He's signing with, but he's not going.
Look, I'm not saying he's going to get traded. I just say I would start being worried because how do you
thinking Crosby's going to sign with the Habs?
I did not say that. I did not say he was getting traded. I'm just saying he's your legacy. After Mario Lemieux, he's the next best. And you don't have him signed to end his career. It doesn't make much sense to me, but we'll see.
We will see. Tier 2 with this team, 80 to 90 points. We do not have anybody hitting those points. The next tier and the next two players will be interesting discussion. Tier 3, 70 to 79. Let's go first with Gino Malkin. What do you guys think about Gino Malkin? Can he get back into his...
Well, I'll start with this one if you don't mind, Junior.
You go, Nick.
Yep.
So, Malkin had 67 points last year. The year before that, he had 83. The year before that, he was on pace for 84. He played 2 consecutive years out of 82 games. I still think he's kind of in between those 2 points. He shouldn't be a 67-point player. He should be at least in the 70s. And it was an off year for him this year. Now, the guy is 38 years old, so you start wondering, he's not necessarily that generational player that Crosby was, right? So is Father Time catching up with him? I still think that he's a top 100 player fantasy points-wise in this current state of the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm not buying him as that point per game guy any longer. And I think it's not even, his shooting percentage was higher actually than it was the year that he had 83 points. His time on ice is exactly the same as the year that he had 83 points. Like nothing changed, but his points dropped. So is this the age kicking in, Father Time kicking in? Or is this just an off year and he should bounce back? That I'm not sure. It's risky.
I think a lot of what changed is he got only half the points on the power play. He had 36 power play points last year, the year before, and 18 only last year. There's something that nobody could figure out with this team, with the amount of talent they have, how they can muster up a decent power play.
Oh, I can tell you the problem.
I don't have much else to say, so go ahead.
Malkin, I believe he's not a point per game player anymore. But I do believe he can hit that set. He hit 67 and they had the 30th power play in the league. So I think he can hit between 70 and 79, lower 70s. The problem with the power play is they don't know who's the quarterback. They tried Carlson and Letang. They thought that was going to be their combo. And then they tried Letang first because obviously he's the veteran and he was there. So basically, the Pittsburgh coaching staff needs to decide which one of those is taking power play one. If I'm the coaching staff, I take the next player we're going to talk about, which is Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson should be your number one power play guy. There's no questions about it. And unfortunately, last year, that's not what happened. And that's why I feel the power play ranked 30th. So Erik Karlsson is in the tier 3 of 70 to 79 points. Do you guys believe he can hit that again?
Yeah, it's hard to take a guy like that and with that much offensive talent and say he's never going to hit that again, or you know what I mean? He's 56 points last year, which is like not bad. I thought it was way worse, but for his sake, we're expecting much more. 11 goals, 45 assists. Shooting percentage was pretty dropped to 5%, but his average is about that. Like only 17 power play points. I expect 20 plus power play points from Karlsson, like everybody else. I think the power play needs to get going in order for these players to hit what we expect of them in terms of points. And I don't know if maybe Michael Bunting coming in helps with the power play in front of the net. You get a decent option there, but yeah, we have him ranked at 70 to 79. I think it's going to be again in the 60 to 69 points. But would I be shocked if he's 70 to 79? Absolutely not.
It's funny because he had 101 points in 22-23. And we knew that wasn't going to be repeatable necessarily. But it's funny how Erik Karlsson is the type of player that when he's the lone alpha wolf on a team, his game elevates. Whereas whenever he has a Brent Burns next to him, for example, or whenever he has a Chris Letang next to him, it always seems that he just either A, shies away, or B, is just not as productive. And I don't know if it's a mentality thing. I don't know if it's a shooting thing, but he constantly plays 23 minutes or more of ice time. So it's hard to say that he's going to be a 50-point guy again. I feel like he should be in that 60 to 70 points. 70 to 80 is maybe shooting a little bit too high because he hasn't done it in so long that I can't. It's like a lottery ticket. I just don't have the faith that he's going to go back to that 100-point player or go back to an 80-plus point player.
I think you nailed the nail on the head with the number of minutes he's playing. I think it's too much. And the more, look, they're not a greatly structured team.
He's 34
so
too.
If he's playing 24 minutes, a lot of that is hemmed into his own end. And they were playing from behind a lot, so he was losing a lot of energy at the end of games, playing like the last 8 of 10 minutes to get these guys back in the game. I think they have to limit his minutes, I think, and he could possibly be more effective. But like you said, I don't think he's that guy anymore. Is he still productive? Yeah, I think he could be easily a 60 to 69 point player. But I don't see him quite hitting 70 plus.
In cap leagues, it's not worth it.
No, unless you get retention. If you have a salary with retention.
Yeah.
$11 million? $11.5 million?
No, if you get retention, it's fine. But
for sure. But we're talking about his actual cap hit.
I think Mike Sullivan better have done his homework this summer because he's not going to survive in Pittsburgh again.
So it's funny because I think it was 5-Hole Fantasy podcast that I was listening to, and they were saying that, Sullivan has this rep as being such a great coach. Yeah, it's great to be a great coach when you have Crosby, Malkin at their primes, Letang in their prime.
Give me Fleury, Crosby, Malkin, and Letang in their prime.
And I'll show you a good coach
behind the bench
and then
win
a
cups.
guy like Hornquist or
Gensel coming out of nowhere. Stop.
Kunitz.
right? So,
but last year has proven that Mike Sullivan cannot make the hard decision. Last year, the hard decision was to tell Chris Letang, you are no longer the number one defenseman on this team. That was the decision that was supposed to be made. Especially when you're getting a defenseman that came off a 101-point season. Your decision is made. You're getting that defenseman not to pair with Letang, to take over Letang's role. And he didn't have the courage to do that last year. Is he going to have the courage to do it this year? No idea. But Carlson will not hit 101 points. But if he gets that power play one duty on his own without another defenseman next to him, and instead of that gets 4 forwards around him, and 2 of those forwards are Crosby and Malkin, I guarantee you Carlson hits that 70 to 79 points.
Well, I mean, I might as well talk about Letang now, I guess, while we're at it.
He's in the next year, so we have him in the 60 to 69.
He already had power play 1.
Right.
Carlson.
Yeah, Letang, they took that away from him. Only 6 power play points and only 1 minute 57 seconds on average a game.
Yes, but how much percentage did Letang have?
66.
And that's it. And Carlson had 36.
Yeah, so Carlson...
No,
Eric
Letang had
Carlson
36.
Eric Carlson had 66% of the power play time. He was power play 1 all the time.
Yeah.
And 36% of the time
Is Letang.
is Letang.
Okay.
So he was power play 2. He still didn't hit all those numbers.
Yeah, but when Gensel was hurt,
And
when
the
Gensel
funny
was
thing
hurt,
is,
it was Letang.
even
and
though
Carlson.
Letang was power play 2 for the majority of the year, he still hit 51 points to Eric Carlson's 55 points. And
I
he didn't
think,
even have the power play time.
and I think a lot of the power play time he did get was when they tried to put Carlson and Letang together on the power play.
Well, when Gensel was hurt, it was only Letang and Carlson. There was nobody else. It was Letang Carlson.
Yeah,
on the
but
power play.
he still didn't average anywhere near Eric Carlson's time on ice for power play.
But so just sticking with Letang here, the last 2 seasons he's paced for 53 and 51 points. I don't quite see him hitting the 60-point mark anymore. Does that make him not fantasy relevant?
How many defensemen in the league hit 50 points? It's not many.
Exactly. Is it a big drop off from the top tier? Yeah, of course. But I think he's still relevant at 50 points for a defenseman, 55 points for a defenseman.
At half the cost.
And look, if he does get some power play time somehow, more consistently, I could see that going up, or if Carlson gets hurt or something. Like, there's opportunity there that, look, regardless of Carlson's arrival, he still played 24 minutes a game.
Yeah.
So, and so did Carlson. So
the only thing
So
I'll say is
opportunities
that Letang might start the year a little bit injured. We'll see. He was seen in a cast on his finger. So we'll see if he's ready for training camp this year, or if he's going to miss a little bit of time. But Letang, I think, value-wise, per dollar spent, is a better defenseman than Eric Carlson is for owning in a cap league.
Per dollar, yeah, because Eric Carlson makes 11, but still at 7.25.
Who's 7.25?
yeah, he signed an extension.
Letang is at
Letang.
7.25.
This year, 7.25? No.
I think he has 1 year left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll double check that for you, but I'm pretty sure
I just
he
checked
did
here.
sign an extension for sure.
It says 7.25 million.
Oh no, Chris Letang is at 6.1
Yeah,
for the
guys,
next 4
okay,
years.
he
For the
changed
next
it.
4 years.
Okay, so this was 2022 salary that they gave me. Okay, so at 6.1, if he puts up 50 points, then yes. At 7.25, if he puts up 50 points, I don't think he's more relevant than that.
Yeah, it's his 3rd year.
But
of,
he's
6.1.
also 38 years old. Already before the season starts, he shows up with a cast on his finger.
37 starting the year.
Yeah, he's gonna turn 38.
He's 37.3.
Yeah, but still,
He'll be 37 pretty much all year.
he's still 37
Regardless.
compared to Carlson's 34.
Yeah. Still, we're talking about people past their primes, but
and
they're still productive.
his injury history too, like, kind of makes him feel older, like we said with Couturier too. Anyways,
Listen, my opinion, Carlson gets more points than Letang this year.
Oh, he did it last year. But
I
barely.
agree 100%.
So maybe Bunting. I'm guessing this is what Nick wrote. Okay, so let's talk about Bunting. What do we think about Bunting? This is Dubas's lover boy, we'll say.
I think Bunting, these are the teams that he thrives with. Like, this is the kind of team he needs, and I think he fits nicely in Pittsburgh. Look, he did it. He did it with Toronto. Austin Matthews, Nylander, Marner. He found ways to put up points. And his last year with Toronto, he had 23 goals, 26 assists, 49 points. He found a way to do it with Carolina, 36 points in 60 games. And look, when he started the year, the 21 games he played with Pittsburgh last year, 19 points in 21 games, just under a point per game. Obviously, is that sustainable through 82? I don't think so. But if he finds the chemistry with the talent he has around them, despite of their age, I think he can hit the 60-point mark. I don't see anyone competing with him for that position. And that role player, that style of player in the Penguins system, since Sullivan is still there, usually thrives. So if I had to, if there was a betting odds that had him at like 50 plus points, I would take the over 100%. I would bet money on the over.
Well, he had 55 points split time between Carolina and Pittsburgh last year. A full year of Pittsburgh, and hopefully their power play increases a little bit. I could easily see him at 60 points. He had a 55 points last year in 81 games, 56-point pace. So 4 more points, yeah, give me that. I'll take that.
So if you guys see Bunting at that, do you see Brian Rust hitting those also in that tier from 60 to 69?
Rust hasn't. So when I take a look at Rust, right, he had a 74-point pace last year.
Mm-hmm.
He hit 56 points. The year before that, only 47 points. The year before that, 79-point pace. The year before that, 62. So, yes, it's very likely that if Pittsburgh gets it back together a little bit, that he could hit that 60 points again.
Yeah, he ended the season strong last year, 20 points in 20 games. He should be in that range because, like, him and Rust, I think, him and Bunting will be top 6 wingers. They'll both have equal opportunity. I think they
both probably on different lines, right? One with
yeah,
Malkin,
that's what I meant.
with-
One on each line. I see him there. I see him at 60 points. Yeah, I think he hits 60 between 60 and 69 points.
Which one of them takes Gensel's spot on the power play?
I think Bunting had it last year, but probably maybe both.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do Letang Carlson. They go with now the not so common 2 defensemen on the power play.
Yeah, well, Daily Faceoff has Crosby with Malkin, Rust, and Bunting, and Erik Karlsson as the number 1 power play unit. And you know what? I kind of agree with it. The only other person that could possibly take it is Raquel. Kevin Hayes is not going to take it, right? Unless they have a specified role for him. So, and I'm not crazy about Beauvillier or Puustinen.
No. Puustinen is going to end up being one of those waiver wire pickups throughout the year where he goes on a little bit of a run. But I don't foresee him anywhere close to one of our tiers, that's for sure.
Okay, so next, power play demon. I mean, we're not going to spend time on this. We spoke about it. It's Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang. There's no one else on that team that's going to be close to taking up their spots. So how about we go straight to a struggle last year, even though it doesn't look in the numbers, but their goalie tandem. We had Tristan Jarry, who had a save percentage of .903, which isn't bad. Goes against 2.91, little high. 18th in goal saves against above expected.
At 5-on-5.
At 5-on-5. And then you had his backup, Alex
Nedeljkovic.
You go, Nick. Save percentage, .902. Goals against average, 2.97, which is high. The GSAE, 50th on 5-on-5. What, Junior, since you're a Jarry owner, what are you?
We're all Jarry owners.
Yeah, I own him now in 2 leagues.
Yeah, we are Jarry. So, okay, so Junior, what do we think about Jarry? Is he, because basically a playoff spot, we can say Pittsburgh's playoff spot will depend on how their goalies do.
Yeah. Now, look, for 2 consecutive seasons, he had a 2.9 goals against average. On an aging team with not a great defensive decor, I don't see it getting better. His save percentage was .903 this year, like you said, .909 the year before, .919. So, like, his save percentage was never extraordinary. I think because he was on a winning team, it just made him look better. But I think this is who Jarry really is. He just needs to win more games to be more fun, like nicer to have in fantasy. Because right now he's absolutely useless. In fact, if you lose points based off save percentage, I don't think he's startable right now. And Nedeljkovic took over for him last year. And luckily for us, the team we took over in DPR, we have Jari, Nedeljkovic, and the Russian guy.
Morozov.
But I think we traded him.
We traded Morozov.
But we traded him, yeah. Anyways, look, I'm not on good terms with Jari right now. Not on good terms.
Nick.
54.9% quality start percentage. It's not great. It means that every second game that he plays is not that great. And to me, that's a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde. You don't know what you're getting when Jari starts. Only 19 wins last year, even though he played 51 games. It hurts. It hurts, especially if your fantasy league counts wins highly for goaltending. He has the opportunity to rebound. We've seen Jari kind of do that in the past, where he'll kind of play better, and then worse, and then better. So I kind of feel like he is who he is. Half the games you'll get a pretty good goalie. Half the games you won't.
Listen, every third win, he got a shutout. Because he ended with 6 shutouts with 19 wins.
Which is probably not repeatable.
No, definitely not. And I'm looking at... No,
red flag there.
Yeah, but it's always when you have more shutouts and the wins at 19, it's a complete red flag. But Alex, Nick,
Nedeljkovic.
yeah, his season wasn't so bad. 18 wins, 7 losses. Do you think he can take this job, the starting position at least, from Tristan Jari?
I not necessarily. Even though they won with Nedeljkovic in there, I don't think Nedeljkovic actually performed better than Jari. I think it's more luck.
No, because his goals against was 2.97.
I think the team kind of just sometimes it happens. The team plays better with a certain goalie for whatever reason.
But his goal save above expected was even worse.
Yeah.
That's what scares me. Only a 42% quality start percentage. That's worse, right? So all the micro stats are telling you he's worse than Jari.
I think what ended up happening was
Except the wins.
Jari was too bad in the second half of the season that they had no choice to go with Nedeljkovic, because I failed to mention it earlier, but in the third quarter of the season, Jari had an .896 save percentage, a goal save above expected of -2.8. And then in the final quarter, in 10 games, only 2 wins, .450 goals against average, .874 save percentage, 1 quality start, quality percentage 10, and a -7.8 goal save above expected. So his second half was so brutal that we could have went in nets and probably put up better numbers.
What did Dubas see in Jari when he was to give him that kind of extension?
I don't know. I think he might be regretting it, but it's not the first time Dubas gives contracts that make no sense.
Look, Dubas has come into a role here where he kind of has his hands tied, where they want to still compete while Crosby's around, but at the same time start rebuilding some prospect pools at the same, right? So, I mean, he's a little bit hands tied behind his back, but it just feels like this guy is not good at negotiating contracts. I don't know.
So, going into one of our prospects, since we're talking about goalies and since we already mentioned his name,
It's called a professional segue.
Oh,
I like
look
it.
at that.
I like it.
Vince was professional. Sergei Morozov signed his entry-level contract. He will be playing the AHL. Came from Russia. Had 6 starts in the KHL. 3 wins, 1 loss, 2 ties. .925 save percentage. Goes against 1.84. If he played most of the year in the MHL, which is basically, I don't know if it's the AHL of the Russian league. It's more like a juniors of the Russian league.
So there's MHL and there's VHL.
And VHL is the junior, so MHL.
VHL is, if I'm not mistaken, VHL is kind of like an AHL, and MHL is kind of the minor league. But anyways, I could be mixing those two up.
Yeah, because I think the MHL is right under the KHL, if I'm not mistaken. KHL, MHL, VHL. Anyways, whatever the case is, in the MHL, he had a phenomenal season. 24 wins, 4 losses, 5 ties, a .930 save percentage, 2.03 goals against average. This kid came a bit out of nowhere because they thought that Blomqvist was going to be their next promising goalie. So is this guy getting, like Nick would say, a cup of coffee in the league this year, in the NHL?
You wanna go first? I don't have much to say, so you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Jarry still has 3 years left on his deal. Nedeljkovic still has 2 years left on his deal. I don't see anyone trading for Jarry at that contract.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they get rid of Nedeljkovic and they give him a cup of tea, but for their sake, keep him as far away as possible from this roster. Let him develop in the AHL, and then when you officially take your next step in what is an inevitable rebuild, you start introducing him.
Okay.
I'm not convinced Murashov is necessarily better than Blomqvist.
No, that's it. But because if you look at if you read the past, Blomqvist was the guy.
Yeah, I don't see him taking over, but it's good to have a couple of options on as your goalie future, especially when your current goaltending tandem is so porous. So I don't think Murashov is ready anytime this year for a cup of coffee. If he gets a game or two, it's because of injuries, maybe. But I think we're still looking at the future here and not necessarily anything that's going to be fantasy relevant this year.
Okay.
Blomqvist, for example, is only a year and a half or 2 years older. And he played in the AHL last year, and he had pretty decent numbers actually. So I still think Blomqvist has the leg up as being the next Pittsburgh guy.
It'll be
AHL is better than the MHL.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they split those starts in the AHL. If they said which they should be sending more stuff to the AHL this year. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on those two goalies in the AHL this year. So we'll talk about the other prospects that they have. I'll just shoot some names out. You guys can pick who you guys want to talk about. Braden Yeager, first round pick, high potential. Owen Pickering, who also is a first round, had pretty high potential, but had a bit of an off year in the juniors, so not sure where he lands on this team anymore. Vasily Ponarev, who they got from Carolina in the Gensel deal, if I'm not mistaken. He got a cup of coffee in the NHL last year with Carolina, but still not sure what we're looking for with him. So do any of these guys come out and say, "Oh, you see them playing a few games in the NHL this year"? Drew?
I don't know. Maybe Braden Yeager, maybe, but not to start the year. Definitely. Look, he's shown a very nice progression in his first year with Moose Jaw in the juniors. First full year, I should say, 59 points in 63 games. He upped that the year after, 78 in 67 games. And then last year, 95 points in 57 games. So anytime you have a prolific, what you think is a prolific prospect, you definitely want to see progression, especially in the juniors. Because if you can't do that in the juniors, it's very rare you're going to do it in the AHL and the NHL. And 5 points in 5 games at the World Juniors with Canada. I see him I think he's playing in the AHL next year. So I do see an opportunity where they could call him up, especially if there's injuries, or maybe they choose to keep him there and give someone else who's a bit older, like Ponomarev or another player they got in the Carolina deal.
Well, Ponomarev is interesting. 5'10" center that Carolina had drafted. High hopes when they drafted him. He did play 2 games, and he's at an 82-point pace, so 100% shooting percentage. So he's the next star. No, all kidding aside. He played 39 games for Chicago Wolves last year, and then actually he split time. Long story short, he had 30 points. We're not talking about necessarily somebody that could be a top sixer.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe bottom 6, and best case scenario maybe middle 6 player, but I don't see him really making any difference fantasy wise. Owen Pickering, Cruz Lucius is another guy that they recently got by trade because Cruz wasn't. I don't think he was a draftee of theirs. They didn't really have anything in their pipeline. So
Well, I think that was the goal of the trade, was to get
Yeah.
NHL caliber prospects, not necessarily top prospects.
Well, when you're a team like Pittsburgh that competed for so many years, you're expecting your pipeline to be very thin. So it is what it is.
he's trying to rebuild some of that depth, right?
Yeah, exactly. So final thoughts and prediction. Dom's model has them at 19 best offseason. Hayes might provide a small upgrade on Carter, but Beauvillier is a downgrade on Riley Smith. Another year that might not be fun for Sid, and maybe another year why Sid has not signed his extension. Should we start the promotion Sid to Montreal? No? Come on.
Not interested. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally not kidding. Totally kidding. Junior,
The
talk to us about a
final.
fun team that made changes.
The most active team
I don't know
in
if you
the
noticed, but
offseason.
during that Pittsburgh segment, I yawned about 3-4 times.
Ooh, not nice.
Talk to me about Washington, who was their rival for the longest freaking time.
The Washington Capitals. All right. So last year, 40 wins, 31 losses. We don't count overtime losses in this podcast. Last year's power play ranking, 18th. Not bad, 20.6%. All right. Hang in there, guys. This is a long list. Who's in? Pierre-Luc Dubois, Mangiapane, Chirkren, Matrois, Duhamel, and Logan Thompson. It's quite a list there. Who's out? Obe Kubel, Malenstein, Jensen, and Darcy Kemper. So quite a bit of action there, I think, for the better, if you ask me. Moving on to the player tiers. You would think after all those changes, there might be a player in Tier 1, 91 plus points, but there isn't. There isn't a player in Tier 2 either, 80 to 90 points, 0. Finally, in Tier 3, we're getting some traction here. Tier 3, we have 2 players. Let's start with the great 8, Alex Ovechkin. Do we see him hitting 70, 79 points? And more importantly, is he going to get, how close will he get to Gretzky's record?
He's going to get close. He's going to get very close. Do you remember last year, the beginning of the season, where we were thinking, is Alex Ovechkin even going to hit 20 goals? With that terrible beginning of the season he had? Now, let's remember, he's a year older. So I think that makes him 39 this year, if I'm not mistaken.
He will start the season at 39.
At 39. And listen, last year he had a terrible beginning of the season. Still finished with 31 goals. Like this, see, generational talent, this is what a generational talent is. So, man, I hope he gets really close. I don't know if he's going to be able to beat, because I think he needs 42 goals to beat Gretzky. Come on.
I should have researched that,
Yeah,
but
you could have told us that you were going to ask that.
he's
question.
got he's got 2 seasons left, and even if he splits 20, I'm sure he could have 2 20-goal seasons, 2 21-goal seasons, right? So if you ask me, he'll get it. Only a matter of time before Matthews takes over, but that's a story for another day.
Stop it. Listen, I think he's gonna get his goals. He's gonna get over 30 goals. He might even hit 40 goals this year. And he'll be between the 70 to 79 points, just because I think there's a little bit more talent than him around there. So
There it is.
yeah, he's 41 goals. Oh man, I hope he hits it. That's gonna be like,
I think he'll hit it. I don't know if he'll hit it this year, but I think he'll hit it.
so. Listen, I think 70, 79, I think is a good projection for him, just because I think he's better surrounded team wise. It's not only him and Dylan Strome. There's a few more players that are possibly could be a threat on offense. So yeah, I feel 70 to 79 is the perfect bracket.
One thing you'll know for sure is that no matter what, he's still getting 96% of the power play time.
97.
Have you ever seen that before? 96%, 96.7, 96.5, 93, 92, 90%. Like he's always PP.
And he's always going to be
always there.
Always going to be in that one spot where he's going to get all his goals.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, he doesn't start the year like he did last year. I was offered him in Lama, and I was fighting for first place with Dan. And if I would have traded for him, but the price was too high, it would have been interesting because he actually put up all those points at the end of the year. and I had felt like he was finished, right? So I think he's going to break the record. I don't know if I doubt it's going to be this year, to be honest with you, but it's going to be fun to watch Washington games just for that.
If he gets close, it's going to be so much fun to watch hockey this year.
And sometimes something like that could like just give the player enough boost to get going, you know. But I've seen him training. He seems to have slimmed down a little bit. Last year, I think it was obvious to everyone he was a bit. I won't say overweight, but he wasn't healthy. Let's say, you know,
a little heavy.
So I expect him to be better. Just naturally having better players around him should help him. And at the same time, it's going to reduce his ice time. And I think that could help him as well. So, that's our first player in player 3. Moving on to the next player in player 3, which was his center for most of the time. 70 to 79 points. We have Dylan Strome projected there. It's a nice amount for Dylan Strome. Nick, lead us off here.
Well, I mean, Dylan Strome had 67 points last year playing 82 games. He is a nice revelation for Washington. He's in his prime. He's 27 years old, and he's just entered his prime. So he's going to be relevant for this team moving forward. I don't see them taking him off Ovechkin's line. So he's still going to be somebody to own in fantasy and has the ability to hit that 70-point plateau. I just don't know if it's going to be more than that necessarily, but I like him as a 70-point player. I think that's very fair that he continues this pace.
I agree with Nick. I don't see him over the 79 point. I see him mid-70. He's been flirting with it the past 2 years. I think this year, especially with the motivation of getting over that record, he'll hit the early 70 points.
Yeah, he's never paced for it before, so maybe this is it. I think this might be... No, that's not true. I was going to say it's one of the better teams he's been on, but I think he had a pretty good team in Chicago at one point. Anyhow, regardless, we do see a little boost in production for Dylan Strome, who in fact did have a career year in points, 67. And a point pace. All right, moving on to the next tier 4. We have one player.
The one and only. I want to trade.
Pierre-Luc Dubois, ladies and gentlemen, projected 60 to 69 points. I'm curious to know your take on this. Let's start with Vince, who's had him in a couple of leagues, I think.
He pisses
on
me
and off.
He pisses me off.
You still own him, don't you?
Yeah, of course I still own him. What am I going to do? Get rid of him?
For pennies on the dollar,
yeah,
maybe?
Exactly. Like, what's the point? You're just hoping that this is the year where his head is screwed on properly and he's just going to want to play for whatever team he's playing for and not ask for another trade. I mean, you know the kid has the talent. You know he's young. But does he have the desire to be that go-to player that everybody wants him to be? And I'm not sure about that anymore. At one point, when a player asks for one trade out of a team, you're like, okay, fine, I'll ask you. Given it, but I mean, it's what, 3 trades he asked for now, or LA?
2. He went from Columbus to Winnipeg, and he signed LA as a free agent.
And LA, he didn't ask for a trade. They just decided that they need to get rid of him.
Yeah, they bought him out.
Yeah.
After 1 year.
They didn't buy him out. They just traded him.
They traded him. Yeah.
For pennies on the dollar.
Pennies on the dollar,
of course. Exactly, just to get rid of his contract. So he never flirted with, like, there's 1 year maybe in Winnipeg where he flirted with a 70-point season. So I don't see him. I see him, listen, if he hits 60, Washington should be giving him a raise. Because
no, $8.5 million for a 60-point player. Please.
But yeah, I don't see him. I especially his first year in the team. Yes, he's coming here to prove something, but I don't see, especially with the players around that he'll be playing with. I mean, he'll probably get the PP1 with Ovi and Carlson and Strome, but I don't see him hitting more than 60 to 70.
I mean, if he is embarrassed enough, I hope that he starts producing, but he's kind of fallen into that category of second-line center at best.
100%.
At best, a second-line center. He's definitely not that prolific number one center that everybody was hoping that he would be when he was younger. We've said a lot about Dubois on this podcast, so I don't know if I really want to spend time. But he's kind of I would say he's running out of chances, but he has a guaranteed contract for the next infinity years at $8.5 million, right? So I just hope he produces for Washington out of the fact that he should be embarrassed.
Was this like, if we look at Washington, this is a low risk move for them, right? Besides the salary at 8.5, this is a low risk move that they made here, making this trade with LA.
I think it was a good trade for Washington. Exactly. Absolutely. I just, it's because of the fact that Washington is looking to give support for Ovi, that they needed a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois because he's a potential top sixer, and they didn't have many top sixers in this team anymore.
No, exactly.
Right? Wilson has taken a few steps back now. He's no longer putting up the points that he was before.
Backstrom took 30 steps back and went back home.
Backstrom, unfortunately, injuries played a role in Backstrom's career, and
I think this is a great situation for him.
It's a nice little retool.
Yeah, they did a good job, the Washington Capitals. Honestly, it's low risk, low reward. Doesn't mean it'll work. I mean, they're still an average team, but I think they're an average team that could compete for the playoff spot. And we'll get to that in that comment in Dom's model. But I think this situation kind of fits him well. I wouldn't be surprised for a major bounce back from Dubois this year. I really think it's look, Columbus was a torch situation. Winnipeg is a very difficult place to play in, and not everybody can thrive in Winnipeg. Not necessarily because of just the city, just the market, everything that goes with it. Washington, LA, forget it. It was just a disaster. That's not an easy system to go into, especially a player like Dubois. So I think now in Washington, I think he has he could have a huge weight off his shoulders. The whole contract talk is over. He's not even a thought because it's all about Ovechkin and the record. And he's just there to supplement. He's not being asked to be like a major point producer, and I think that'll help him a lot. You guys mentioned the power play. He'll definitely get power play 1. And he's going from 15 minutes of ice time. I think that goes up to 18 with Washington. So I could see a boost in production, him flirting with 60 points for sure. All right, sorry. So moving on. That does it for our tier 4. The next player we're going to talk about in the power play defenseman, I'm curious to know if has any chance at all to hit 60 again. But John Carlson, essentially not their only... Actually, this is we'll group this together. We'll group this conversation.
Wait. Number 1 defenseman?
No, not anymore. Doesn't produce enough anymore to be a number 1 defenseman.
But was?
Was, yes. Yes, he was. Okay, so I'm gonna lead this to you guys, and I think the best discussion to have here is maybe a group discussion. But they've added Chychrun, they've had Sandin, and they have John Carlson. I don't see John Carlson losing power play 1 time. Where do you guys feel here? And let's talk both about. I mean, I don't see Sandin taking that much of a jump, but what do you guys think of Carlson and Chychrun? Who's the lead dog? For how long? And what can we expect point-wise from both of them? Any of them at all have a chance at 60?
Well, John Carlson absolutely has a chance at 60. And the reason for that is because of the fact that, A, he is the most prolific offensive defenseman that they have. I like Chychrun. I like Chychrun a lot, and I think that, his age, 26, he's still in his prime, and maybe just entering his prime. I think that he is a possible 50-point defenseman. But John Carlson is and has been a much more prolific defenseman than that. So I don't see him necessarily taking a step back from that this year. Maybe eventually Chychrun will be the guy that takes over. Sandin maybe as power play 2 eventually. I traded for Sandin because I did expect Sandin to take a step forward in his second year or second full year in Washington, let's say, because he had a really bad year last year. But John Carlson's still the stud here.
Yeah, I think the Chychrun move is more of them realizing that Sandin cannot be the defenseman they want than John Carlson losing his number 1 role. I still believe John Carlson has talent, even with his age, like Nick said. He was a prolific defenseman, and he still is. So I just think Chychrun is the next guy up, whereas before they thought was Sandin. So the whole acquiring Chychrun is they're getting ready that if Carlson has to minimize his minutes or whatnot, Chikrim is the guy who's going to take over.
When Carlson, I think it was the year before. Last year, Carlson played 82 games, but when Carlson was injured 2 years ago, he only played 40. Sandin was actually pretty productive on the power play, but wasn't really productive enough 5-on-5. And what Chikrin is going to do is he's going to reduce John Carlson's 25, almost 26 minutes on ice to probably 23. And I think that's going to do him wonders. And it'll reduce also the 71% power play rate that he's on. He plays for 71% of the time. And I think John Carlson was just doing way too much. And the older he gets, the more he was doing, which usually should be the opposite. So I see that balancing out and possibly giving him more points as well. Any final thoughts on defensemen? Or shall we move on to the goalie tandem here? All right, let's move on to the goalie tandem. So Charlie Lindgren, who was their best goalie last year with a save percentage of .911 and a goals against average of 2.67 last year, goals save above expected at 5-on-5, 21st in the league. For Charlie Lindgren, I think that's very successful. The newly acquired Logan Thompson from Vegas. So last year with the Vegas Golden Knights had a save percentage of .908, a goals against average of 2.7. Very similar numbers to the Charlie Lindgren. And a goal save above expected at 5-on-5, he ranked 30th. Who gets the nod here? I mean, it's got to be Thompson, right?
I don't know. Listen, I think at some point Thompson will take over. I think there's still, for what Charlie Lindgren did to Washington for Washington last year, which is basically bring them into the playoffs, I think he's still going to have the first crack at proving he's a number one goaltender. But it wouldn't surprise me that as soon as he starts his struggles, that Logan Thompson will come in and take over that role. Not that Logan Thompson has proven that he can be a number one goaltender, but I still think that he is better than Lindgren.
It's hard to really compare because we don't know what Logan Thompson could do in front of Washington's defense. Vegas's defense was quite good. So we'll see now with a weaker defense in front of him if he's still going to be able to put up decent numbers or not. The way I see it is that Charlie Lindgren played a great season last year. It was his first season that he was like the number one bona fide starter, playing 50 games. And his quality start percentage was 56% quality starts. That's great. Not phenomenal, but good for Charlie Lindgren numbers, I should say. So I'm just not so sure that he has this magic again. Doing it 2 years in a row is a lot harder than a one-hit wonder that he might have been last year. He's going to share time. He's 30 years old. He's not. It's not like he's a young buck anymore, right? So if he does it again this year, that's a big win for Washington. Logan Thompson, I kind of have more faith in Logan Thompson as well, but like I said, it's hard to compare because he played on Vegas team, which was a stacked team last year. So we'll see. We'll see. He also played 46 games last year, so it's still a pretty big sample size. And he had 908 save percentage, 56 quality start percentage, so kind of similar.
Yeah, I think the ideal thing for Washington in this case is almost like a 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
They both need to play a lot of games, and I think it'll balance out and solidify their team play. To give either of them a number one shot of like 56 plus games, it's pushing it. That's how I see it. All right, so let's to final thoughts. Anything you want to add before final thoughts?
Did you do any prospects?
of the prospects? Oh yes, actually, one of my this guy has grown to be one of my, I think, favorite prospects. So I'll start with him. His name is Ryan Leonard. Wish the Habs would have drafted him, but we'll see how it pans out. Anyhow, so they have Ryan Leonard, Ivan Miroshnichenko, who saw some games in the NHL last year, didn't look too shabby. Andrew Cristal, small, skilled forward, drafted in the second round, I believe. Hendrix Lapierre, who will be a full-timer this year, I believe. played quite a bit last year. This time should be a third line player. And Parasak, who's a little similar, I believe, to Cristal. Very skilled. I'm not sure of his size, but a nice, decent prospect pool with one, I believe, I'll say one elite prospect, and then the rest I feel like more second tier, but I think they can all be very legit NHLers. Tell me about these guys. And Nick, I know you own Ryan Leonard. Do you want to start with a word on him, or?
Well, out of all these guys, I think Ryan Leonard is the only guy that could be a top line player. Miro Shisansko had his battles with cancer, unfortunately, but he seems to be over them now, which is a great positive. And he's already playing some NHL games. I'm just not sure if he's really a top line player, more of a second, third line person. Andrew Cristal has all the talent in the world. I own him as well in Lama, but maybe more of a specialist. So we'll kind of see how he develops here. He still has some time. He's not going to be fantasy relevant this year. Hendrix Lapierre is the only one that's fantasy relevant this year, and he's most likely taking a step back if Dubois is playing second line center. So I'm not so sure anymore how fantasy relevant he'll be this year. If Dubois moves to the wing, however, I mean, Lapierre could end up playing second line. So we'll have to see training camps. And Parashak, very cerebral player, high intelligence player, has some skill as well, but years away. Great for Dynasty.
Yeah, I feel with the age of Dylan Strome, the age of Dubois, Chikrim, I think we can say that Washington is in the middle of a retool rebuild type of thing, because they got young players that are NHL stable, and then the ones they have here, I see Ryan Leonard. I obviously see him in a top 6 role, but Miroshchenko and Cristal could hit that top 6 depending on how they develop, and if not, they can still, I don't see them as fourth line players. They're third line players, so I feel their prospects aren't too bad. Hendrik Lapierre, I think this is the year where he needs to show something. I'm not saying 50 points, but needs to show that he can handle staying in the NHL. And like I said, the prospects are there. We haven't spoken about him. Manjapane, is he a big add to this team?
Secondary scoring,
Which they didn't have last year.
So that part's big, but not necessarily fantasy relevant, I think, anymore.
If Washington will be successful, he'll have to hit 50 points.
Okay. Which is not bad.
Which
for
I think is fair to predict for him, to project.
Okay.
20 goals, 35 20 goals, 40.
He's only hit 50 points once in his career, though.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying that it's very hard to project him as a 60-point player in our tier pools.
No, I wouldn't project him in 60.
But maybe a waiver wire ad type guy. I don't see him getting 35
agreed.
goals either.
He'll be a good waiver wire pickup when he goes on a streak.
If he plays with Dubois and they get a good chemistry going.
Yeah.
Before we move on to final thoughts, I just want to touch on Lapierre, who had his best quarter of the season, was his final quarter. In 22 games, he had 10 points, 25 shots on goal. His power play time increased to 2 minutes, and he barely had any power play time before that. And his total ice time started with 8:20 and went all the way to 13. So that's a nice progression you want to see. Yeah, is there a little bit more of a traffic jam now, less opportunity? Maybe, but I kind of like where he was trending. And one last prospect who we forgot about, Cole Hudson. I think he's nice. He's a nice addition in the pipeline there. I think he's going to be what they were hoping Sandin would be when they acquired him.
Right. I mean, let's not totally poo-poo Sandin completely here. The fact is that it was his first year in a new location.
No, second.
When did they acquire him?
2 years ago.
Was it?
Yeah.
I believe Junior's right.
I know because I had him, and Carlson had gotten injured and he was getting points for me.
Oh, that's
and
right.
then last year, Carlson
I mean, they kind of acquired him mid-season.
Mid-season, yeah.
It wasn't so. His first full year was still Washington in 23-24, and he kind of had a down year.
He's not a bad player. He's still an NHL player.
Yeah, I mean, I see him as a 35 to 40 point defenseman. I don't see him more than that.
Yeah, just more of an assist guy. I don't think he has like the tools to shoot.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it was just interesting. I really like the Cole Hudson addition in the second round last year. So this year, and that does it for the Washington Capitals. Final thoughts. Well, Dom's model had them ranked third best offseason. Some serious upgrades on D with Matt Roy. I think it's Matt Roy. Anyway, Matt Roy and Chikrin. Two top six additions on forward with Dubois and Mangiapane, and two on the top four defensemen. So it's an average team that looks a little better, and an average team that these moves make them playoff contenders.
A team that could hit the playoffs, probably still eliminated in round one.
In 4 games.
All right. Well, I think
it's still a very interesting team though to follow this year.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be fun to see Dubois and how he does.
it's an interesting division, guys.
It's The Metro has been fun.
But
to
with
talk
Washington
about.
itself, if Ovi gets on a hot streak, he can propel the whole team to follow him, right? And the closer he gets to that record, the more players will be motivated to get there. It's
going to have to be a good start.
Yeah,
they'll have to come out of
100%.
the gates with like a very good start. Feel good, if Ovi feels good about himself, the team's going to be. I agree 100% with that statement.
Well, we'd love to hear what anybody has to say about this. So talk to us about Washington. Talk to us about all the other teams that we talked about. We didn't really say it before, but number one D-man. Do we have anybody in Pittsburgh according to Junior?
Not anymore.
All right.
Anymore.
Do we have Eric
Carlson
Carlson no
and
longer
Letang?
number one?
No, he doesn't produce enough points, and he's not relied upon for any other.
Wow. Somebody's going to come into the comments and say, "Well, but he had 100 points that."
No, he was once upon a time a number one defenseman because he produced enough to be a number one defenseman consistently. But he's just not that anymore. And I think in this Metro Division, the only one left is Adam Fox. Not the Metro Division. In this part 2 of Metro Division,
Right.
Adam Fox is the only
Nobody
number
in
one
Philly
defenseman
either, right?
left.
Because we skipped that as well.
No,
Not yet. Maybe Drysdale.
Maybe, but right now nobody's even close.
All right.
That wraps up the Metro Division, guys. Next week we'll start the show with our rankings.
That's right.
Our projected
we have
rankings.
Carolina out of the playoffs.
No, you have Carolina.
I
out of the
have
playoffs.
Carolina out of the playoffs.
Guys, follow us on Partial Break Pod on Instagram. We're very active on Instagram, kind of active on X. We are on every single podcast platform, Spotify, Apple. Leave us some reviews there. It always helps the algorithms for us to get more listeners. We love your comments, even if they make absolutely no sense, like a few of you do send. And on YouTube, we put not only the full episodes, we put the clips, we put the audio only. So please go and subscribe to us on YouTube. We used Daily Face Off. We used StatMuse. We use
Frozen Tools,
Frozen
Dogger
Tool,
Prospects,
Money Puck.
Fan Tracks, Cap
Fan
Wages,
Tracks.
Daily Face Off.
Thank you to all those sites that actually make this job even easier for us.
If it was a job, we'd get paid, Nick.
Have a great week, everybody.
Have a great week, everybody.